Hey guys, welcome back with another video of Linksy, and today we're gonna have a top 5 starter lords, as I would believe they are the top 5 easier lords, most accessible, and best for people who are coming from other Total Wars, who are new to Total War Warhammer, who are generally new to the gaming part. I think this would be a simple guide and quite a straightforward guide. I'll be going through each lord. I'll be talking this, of course, from any difficulty standpoint, but I highly recommend. This is a video geared towards people who are new to the game and hence do not play anything harder than normal. Total War Warhammer is completely different. Total War Warhammer is something that is essentially its own monster. If you've been very good at historical Total War games, you're gonna struggle a little bit till you get used to Warhammer, but you're also going to love it because every single race is so different and there is so much that can be seen and edited. Without further ado, let's go to number 5. So at number 5, I would put Gorok, the White Dwarf, starting Kazakh Karak. He is, of course, of the Dwarf faction. He is one of the 4 lords you can have for dwarfs. The others are Thorgrim Grudgebearer, Ungrim Ironfist, and Balagur Ironhammer. I would recommend, and I would say Gorok is much stronger than Thorgrim, both of which start Kazakh Karak. I have done guides for both, and essentially speaking, they are just an incredible faction to start off with because they don't have magic at their disposal since they are dwarfs. They have runes, they have buffs to their units, etc, etc. They do have some interesting mechanics, and I think Gorok is fantastic at this because he has the opportunity of increased evasion chance for the underway, which really helps newer people. It has strength against elves, which you're not going to really use early game, but if you go into the late game, it's going to be something that happens, and you're going to have the ability to call on the power to the ancestor. This, combined with a few faction mechanics, allow you to get a taste of Warhammer is and start understanding also how the world works. Position wise, you also start at a decent place. You start with a really strong capital, which is Kazakh Karak, which is very rich since you have a good resource, which is diamonds. The main reason I don't put this higher, and it used to be higher, is that you have the orcs around you and they have been buffed significantly, especially Grimgor down here, because frankly speaking the AI gets a ridiculous amount of strength, and hence it's a little bit of a difficult campaign. But if you do approach it from a slow and steady point of view, you'll find lots of familiar things. You have a staunch front line, you have missiles, and you have artillery. You do not get any form of cavalry because these are of course dwarves. They cannot really ride anything except maybe a mountain goat, but I think they're quite easy and accessible in terms of mechanics compared with some of the other factions, especially perhaps Skaven, Chaos, Norskin, and such. So yeah, I would put Gorok at number 5. Moving on to number 4. At number 4, I would put Draika. And before anyone starts biting at my head for putting on quite a complex character and quite a complex faction, Draika is the most basic, I believe, in terms of all the Wood Elves, and at the same time one of the most strongest Wood Elf legendary lords there is, for a simple reason. She gets Codil. She also herself is incredibly powerful and has really strong mechanics. Another thing why Wood Elves would be, in my opinion, a very good entry point for newer players to the genre and for newer players to Warhammer Total War is because Wood Elves are the trope of what we see elves as. They are, living in the trees, arrows, hiding, stalking, lots of tree spirits. So it's something that is very relatable to any fantasy fan, but at the same time also adds all of these new mechanics as the research tree, which is quite different. The economy is different, the leveling up, and it allows people to get to know the game better. Also, I believe Draika to be one of the easiest campaigns in the Mortal Empires. There is, again, simply for the reason she's so powerful. And on lower difficulties, not looking at legendary, you tend to have a relatively easy time conquering the land around you, making treaties and expanding, growing your wood, and generally building tall. I believe the fact that you can build tall and play defensive will allow newer players to enjoy the game more and not have to stress fighting a war on 10 fronts. On legendary as well, it can get relatively easy once you get a grasp of the campaign, and for that I simply recommend watching one of my videos on Draika, or watch Legends of Total War campaign. He does an incredible Draika campaign at the start and shows her strength. With that said, I think that is all I have to say about Draika. I do believe she is a bit of spice. You know, that little bit of cinnamon and pumpkin spice at Christmas time that will get people more hooked in. Quite unusual, but really cool. The next one will be, of course, Gorok. And why would I say, of course, Gorok? Gorok is a lizard. He commands an army of dinosaurs. Gorok also starts with Lord Croak and starts in the last year Super Bowl, which can be a little bit difficult, hence why I did not rate them higher. But the reality is Gorok has a really strong roster of early game units, a really strong mage, which has a very simple spell, which does what exactly it says it will do. It will create a small, medium, and large explosion, and so people don't have much of confusion with that. Everyone likes to play as the giant dinosaurs. Everyone has fun with dinosaurs. I and you and everyone else that you know, when they were kids, they played with giant dinosaur toys or just fantasized about Jurassic Park or any of the sort. So it's very relatable. You know what they're going to do. Big dinosaur will eat small rat. Big dinosaur will eat puny human. They will stomp, crush, and trample all their way through the entire campaign. It's accessible in that regard, and also it's an easy campaign. It's fun, it's funky, you get to meet a lot of other factions. It gets you introduced to the Skaven in a really nice way, because you get to fight Skaven in early game, so you understand a little bit how they work, but also you get to stomp them quite easily. It is also cool because you get, apart from Skaven, you get to meet the High Elves, the Dark Elves, and Vampire Coast over there. And you start with a really strong city as well in Itza. So that said, that was my number 3 in Gorok. And for a number 2, I will look at no one else but Leon Kerr. Why Leon? Why Bretonnia? They are the French errantry knights. Again, when we think of fantasy, we think of knights with magical swords and horses, with slight magic, maybe riding a hippogriff or a flying beast. And this is exactly what the Bretonians are. They are the French-inspired knights. They have a feudal system. They have nice, fantastical castles, which again is very relatable for most of us growing up with our fantasy movies, the stories of King Arthur, etc, etc, etc. And it also has a really simple economy, really simple mechanic, and starts in a really good position with Couronne, and generally, on my honest opinion, is the strongest faction in the entire campaign as of the late game strength they have. Even for expert players, you can keep learning and adapting and changing your technique to eventually, hopefully, reaching the ultimate pinnacle of perfection and cheese at the top, where you get free armies forever. Also, the Bretonians have the strength of being cavalry faction. They have, you know, the peasant front line. They have archers. They have trebuchets. They have knights. So, again, very accessible, very easy to understand what does what. It's, you know, your mind instantly clicks, okay, cavalry charges and tramples down units. Again, if you play on legendary difficulty, the mechanics change a little bit. Play on normal, this is not a legendary video or guide or tier list. It is simply a discussion on, if you're new to the game and thinking about getting the game, what you should be playing. And I think Bretonnia should be your first or second, in this case, playthrough, because I think the most easy to access and most straightforward, and at the same time gives you an introduction to generally pretty much most of the game, would be Tyrion of Lothern. Tyrion is a high elf and is a very, very strong high elf. You get multiple bonuses for starting as Tyrion. Number 1, you are limited in the number of enemies you have. You get to experience confederations in the game in a much smoother fashion than most. And if you want to enjoy all the possible Confederation types with all and every single faction of the High Elves, check out Mercy the Mad. He is an incredible YouTuber and he does some impeccable Confederation science. Highly recommend it, you check him out. But why Tyrion? Well, Tyrion, you get the roster of the elves. Again, if any of you, and I know 90% of you have heard of Lord of the Rings, you think of these elves in long pointed clothes and just armor and super shiny long bows and swords and magic and dragons. It has all the fantasy tropes and everything that we would long for. It is an easy campaign because you start on an island and you get to conquer the island, which is full of other high elves. There are some dark elves, which are your enemies. You can get invaded by pirates, so it gives you a bit of idea of sea mechanics. High elves have access to almost every single lore of magic, if not every single lore of magic. And that gives you also the option to understand and experience magic in the game. While playing it, you get to, you just get to experience the game at a different level. Plus also High Elves are a base game for base race for Warhammer 2, so most people buy Warhammer 2 first before they buy any of the other Warhammer DLCs, which is essentially Warhammer 1, where you get Bretonnia and the Dwarfs. Why I would recommend Tyrion, as if you're the first ever playthrough of Total War Warhammer? Well, because it's fun, it is an experience, it is enjoyable, and well, I'm not gonna spoil it, but you're definitely gonna get hooked after this. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed this video. This are my thoughts. They're not necessarily the best, they're not necessarily what everyone agrees to. I'm trying to give you guys the idea of, if you're new, what you should try out. And with that said, have a lovely day. I'll see you tomorrow. And if you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. If you've been here a while, thank you. And yeah, take care. Bye.